Picture this scenario. You're in the middle of rounds. The attending physician asks a question about a patient's treatment plan. You know the answer, you know the psychology, you know the pharmacology, you know the protocol perfectly. But for a split second, you hesitate. You worry about your accent or you worry about phrasing it perfectly. And in that second of hesitation, a non-native English-speaking colleague speaks up and says exactly what you were thinking. That feeling right there, that isn't a lack of medical knowledge. It's not even a lack of English fluency. You're already fluent. The crisis is confidence. But here is the dangerous myth that holds so many healthcare professionals back. The belief that confidence is a personality trait. You think, I'm just not a confident speaker, or I just wasn't born with that kind of charisma. Today, we're going to prove that confidence is not a trait you're born with, it's a skill that you can build. Everyone, welcome to Frustrated to Fluent. I'm Devin Bruce. I'm the founder and CEO of the English Communication Academy, and we help non-native English speakers in healthcare communicate effectively with their patients, colleagues, and staff. And before I dive in, I have a free guide called 10 Healthcare Phrases Every Healthcare Professional Should Know. It's packed with practical tools to help you sound more natural and in control. You can grab it using the link below in the description box. Now, let's start by defining the problem. In psychology, there is a massive difference between trait confidence and self-efficiency. Trait confidence is viewed as a stable part of your personality. So you're either like an introvert or an extrovert, you're either bold or you're shy. If you view your English communication through this lens, you are setting yourself up for failure. You set yourself up for failure because it implies that you cannot change. It also suggests that your hesitation is just who you are. Research by psychologist Albert Bandura introduces a different concept called self-efficiency. This is not a personality trait. This is a belief in your capacity to execute behaviors necessary to produce specific performance attainments. In simpler terms, that's just saying that the confidence to do a specific task in a specific context. So, for example, think about your clinical skills. Were you born knowing how to intubate a patient, or were you born knowing how to manage a code blue? No, absolutely not. You were probably terrified the first time you did it. But today, you do it without even thinking. That is self-efficiency. You built that confidence through training. And today, I'm going to show you how to apply Bandura's 4 sources of self-efficiency for your English communication. All right, let's get to it. Now, according to Bandura, the most effective way to build a strong sense of efficacy is through mastery experiences. This simply means having a history of success. But unfortunately, here is the problem for non-native English speakers. Your brain is wired to delete your successes and highlight your failures. So, for example, you might have 20 successful conversations with patients in a single shift. You explain diagnoses, you cover families, you update charts. But the moment you stumble over one word during a handover with a supervisor, your brain says, see, my English is terrible. To turn confidence into a skill, you need to hack this bias. You need to consciously collect mastery experiences. I want you to start keeping a communication victory log. I know this sounds simple and plain, but the science backs this up. Every day, write down just one interaction where you were understood clearly. Now, this does not have to be like a TED talk or anything like that. It can be as simple as, I gave the nurse instructions and she executed them immediately without asking for clarification. By documenting these small wins, you are providing your brain with invaluable data. You are proving to yourself that you are capable. And in healthcare, we rely so heavily on evidence-based practice for treating patients. So when you look at your log of 50 successful interactions, it becomes much harder for your brain to argue that you can't speak English. You are building a resume of competence that your anxiety can't ignore. All right, source number two is vicarious experiences. This means seeing people similar to oneself succeeded by sustained effort. So, this raises the observer's belief that they too possess the capabilities to master comparable activities. However, many of us are doing this wrong because you're comparing yourself to the wrong people. You look at your colleague, for example, who was maybe born in Ohio and has been speaking English since birth, and you feel bad that you don't sound like them. That is not a fair comparison, and it kills your confidence. Instead, look for role models who share your background. So look for that senior attending physician who has a heavy accent but commands the room. Look for the head nurse who makes grammar mistakes but is deeply respected for their clarity and compassion. Observe them. How do they handle a misunderstanding? They probably don't panic, and they definitely don't apologize profusely. They simply rephrase and move on. And then they prioritize clarity over perfection. By observing them, you realize that a perfect American accent is not a requirement for professional respect. So your goal is never to sound like a native English speaker. Your goal is to communicate like a leader. And when you shift your focus to these realistic role models, you realize that the path to leadership is open to you, accent and all. All right, the third pillar is social persuasion. This is the feedback you get from others. So, for example, in a high pressure environment like a hospital, feedback can feel blunt or overly critical. But if someone asks you to repeat yourself, you might interpret that as, they can't understand me. I'm failing. Let's reframe this by using the growth mindset concept pioneered by Carol Dweck. Because in a fixed mindset, a request for clarification is a judgment on your intelligence. In a growth mindset, it's simply data. But here's the thing, you need to actively seek out scientific social persuasion. Don't ask your colleagues, is my English okay? That is too vague, and they will probably say yes to be polite. So instead, ask specific questions related to clinical communication. So, for example, ask a trusted mentor, when I presented that case history, was the timeline clear? Or did I speak too fast during the emergency handoff? Because when you get specific, positive feedback on these skills, it reinforces your belief that you can improve. You stop worrying about English as this big, giant, insurmountable mountain and start focusing on communication as a set of technical skills like pacing, volume, structure that you can adjust and master. This turns the vague fear of judgment into a concrete feedback loop for improvement. Finally, we have to talk about the physical side of confidence. Bandura calls this somatic and emotional states. For example, so when you are stressed, your body reacts, right? Your heart races, your palms sweat, your throat tightens. And in a medical emergency, you know how to manage this adrenaline to save a patient. But when it comes to speaking English, you interpret these physical signs as proof of your incompetence. You may think, my heart is racing, so I'm going to mess this up. Here's the secret though, the physiological response of anxiety is almost identical to the physiological response of excitement or readiness. The difference is the story that you tell yourself. So when you feel that tightness in your chest before speaking up in a meeting, stop labeling that as fear. Label that as alertness. I know that sounds very simplistic, but it really does make a difference because your body is preparing you to perform. High performance athletes feel this. Surgeons feel this. You probably feel this. It's just energy. So if you treat confidence as a skill, you learn to regulate this state. You take a tactical breath. You slow your rate of speech intentionally. You ground yourself. You don't wait for the feeling of anxiety to go away before you speak because you speak while feeling it, knowing that the feeling does not dictate the quality of your ideas. So the more you speak through the discomfort, the more you desensitize that trigger. This is how you train the skill of confidence under pressure. All right, I know this one was a lot. So let's review. Confidence is not a genetic trait that you missed out on. It is a structure that is supported by 4 pillars: mastery experiences, vicarious modeling, social feedback, and emotional regulation. You have spent years mastering the complexities of modern medicine. You have the discipline. You know you have the intelligence. You simply need to apply that same rigorous scientific approach to your communication skills. So stop waiting to feel confident and start building confidence, interaction by interaction. All right, if this video helped you, please hit like and subscribe. I post new videos every week to help you build real world fluency in your professional life. Also, please share this because I am on a mission to close the English gap. And if you want quick fixes, don't forget to download my free guide, 10 phrases every healthcare professional should know. It's jam-packed with essential phrases, when to use it, when not to use it, and use real-life examples in healthcare. The link for that is in the description box below. And if you like this video, check these other ones out too. All right, that's it for today, and I'll see you next time. Take care.